So, yes, delighted to have you all here. We're delighted to be here. Absolute pleasure to be here with these experts as well, so be ready to catch some knowledge. My name is Mhairi Palmer. I'm here with Curve Royalty Systems. So I'm basically their feet on the ground in North America. Don't let the accent fool you. So originally from Scotland. So yes, over the last 15, 20 years, my career spanned over multiple sort of royalties, administrative jobs between neighbouring rights, label royalty administration, publishing royalties, the whole lot. So I was delighted to be invited here today to be the moderator for this panel. You know, that's not often that people in our path, our career path, get to geek out over this stuff to a willing audience. So thank you all for being here and wanting to listen to us. So I'd love to introduce our panel to you. So we have Emmy, who's the Director of Label Relations at Eddy App. We have Cheryl, who's the VP of Royalty Services at The Orchard. And we have Guillaume from ShineX, based in Montreal.
Quebec City.
So, yes, Emmy, do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you end up working in music royalties?
Yes, very exciting. Hi, I'm Emmy. I'm at Eddy, which is a royalty accounting software solution for indie labels. My career was really always in record labels, basically doing A&R and label management at Bar None Records, Los Lonely Boys label, Ben Queller's label. I worked at The Orchard, and what I noticed is that royalty accounting is hard for everyone. So I was excited to see such a great solution and to be able to fix a problem that people are having.
Cheryl, take it away.
Yeah, I'm Cheryl Reindell, VP of Royalty Services at The Orchard. The Orchard's a full-service kind of global distribution company, for those of you who don't know. And we offer at The Orchard part of we call it a collaborators tool, which allows you to actually calculate royalties within the Orchard distribution workstation system. So we offer that today for labels that work with The Orchard. We also own a company called Royalty Share. My career started working at emusic.com. You know, I came right out of college. I played the oboe. I really enjoyed playing an instrument, being a musician, majored in performance, and then halfway through college realized, wow, like, it's going to be hard to make money and travel and do the things I really want to do. So I went into doing a double major in music business. Got a double degree, and then went to work at emusic.com in like the early 2000s, I guess. I'm dating myself, but it was the first download service that ever offered music downloads before Apple Music came about in like 2000, I guess, 3. So we started sending royalty statements to people in boxes, like paper, right, to record labels, and trying to figure out, man, like, how are people actually really going to deal with this? Are they going to key in all these royalties, you know, one by one? What systems are they going to use? There weren't a lot of systems out there at the time. So then in 2005, Royalty Share came about, right? And I was part of the fourth person there next to the 3 founders. We built a customer base. We built a system, a web-based system to help record labels, mostly medium to large size record labels, calculate royalties. And then in 2013, we got bought out by The Orchard. They used us as part of their service offering to kind of say, we didn't have the collaborators tool yet, but we could say, hey, we're a distributor. We offer a royalty platform for you to use. And hey, sign up for us, get that part of the service. So today, we still offer Royalty Share as part of The Orchard. We also offer Royalty Share as part of non-Orchard customers too, because there's a lot of need, just as Emmy said, right? It's hard to calculate royalties. Everybody's got to do it. It's like taxes, right? Or payroll at a company. You got to do it, right? And no one's real expert in it necessarily. You're a label. You might just be a general manager. You might be just an artist, but you have to pay, you know, some band members, things like that. So everybody needs some kind of system, and that's why we're here, and that's where we came from.
It's funny, I didn't realize that, but I think we had a similar thought process back in school, university days, where I had a little eureka moment where I thought the only way to make money from my instrument in brass bands was to sell my instrument.
Right. Or
At
be a
which point,
teacher,
at
right?
which point, I was like, music royalties. That's the way to
Well,
go.
and I thought like, oh, can I be the oboist in the Philadelphia Orchestra? How hard would it be to be that, right? And I looked at it and I was like, man, I mean, no, the guy's either got to die or, when there is a position available, it's going to be very competitive. And so I thought, you know what, like, that's not my path, but I want to help musicians get paid. And if I can work at a technology company and help musicians get paid and help labels understand how to pay those people, that's where my heart is. And that's why I love what I do.
I think we all share that.
Exactly.
Guillaume, tell
All right,
us.
Guillaume from Shinex. 4 years ago, I created a system that tracks everything that plays on Sirius, and we help artists and labels collect 100% of their neighboring rights from SiriusXM. So it all started when I was a musician, and we got a check from SoundExchange for like $50,000. And that was for about 3 songs playing on SiriusXM. And I was like, what is this? Why is it paying so much? And all of my artist friends have no idea. They had no idea like why it was paying, who he was paying, and what songs and all that. So I started analyzing all the statements, and I found out the logic behind it. And the thought process I had was, wouldn't it be nice to have a place where I can type in my artist name and see all the royalties coming in from Sirius in real time? And it didn't exist, so I basically created it. So, and after that, it kind of expanded into a full SiriusXM one-stop shop services where we audit catalogs completely all the way back to 2015 to see if there was any unpaid royalties. We have a dashboard where people can see all of their royalties in real time coming from Sirius. And we now do SiriusXM pitching. So we keep that steady flow of royalties coming in forever.
Catalogs, Universal, EMI, WMG?
Catalogs, this is a catalog, so yeah. So that's how it got started. And it's pretty exciting. We've been able to help a lot of artists, a lot of labels collect unpaid royalties. I think it was a couple months ago we found $30,000 for a girl that was about to sell her home because she didn't have any money left and she kind of lost her job. And it was like she was basically just crying while she was receiving the money. So it's super nice, and we love what we do.
And I think that's a common thing as well. When artists, they know they're getting the airplay, they know they have activity, but just knowing where those revenue streams are, it's not common knowledge out there. So when someone's on Sirius, they don't realize there can be a big payout through SoundExchange. Yeah. It's a really interesting thing there.
Yeah. Well, I guess artists, it's difficult for some of them in the revenue stream and all of that. So if we can help them get the royalties, then they can focus on making another song and more great music.
Yeah, and I know from my perspective, our labels that we work with deal with a lot of SoundExchange files, right? And I know that SoundExchange pays the labels and they get their share, but then another share goes to the artist, but they don't all necessarily register. So there's this big black box of money that, folks like, Guillermo actually help people gather and figure out how do I get that money for those people that they didn't realize was available.
And the other thing as well, remember that to get your SoundExchange royalties as an artist, the label or the master rights owner has to register the recording first before the artist can even collect. So it's a kind of 2-step process. Even if you own your own masters as well, you have to make sure that's all registered. But if your label is, if you're signed to a label, push the label to make those registrations, because until they make those, you can't collect your artist share.
How many people are registered at SoundExchange here? Wow. All right, we'll come to our booth.
Here's a quick survey. How many people in the audience, how many artists are here today, performing artists? 1, 2. How many songwriters? Artist, singer, songwriter, a few. Record label representatives? A lot of labels. Get your SoundExchange registrations taken care of. Publishers, any publishers? Yep. Okay, so we've got a pretty good mix of label and publishing side. It's good to know. Okay, so here is my first sort of main question to our panelists. What would you say is the biggest pain point for collecting music royalty payments? And secondary question, how could you mitigate this? What would your idea be? Emmy, take it away.
The biggest pain point on collecting. It's been a while since I was really in charge of that at a label, but I think oftentimes it's disputes are a problem, knowing where to collect from, and then also dealing with the accounting part of it.
So when you say disputes,
Like sound exchange disputes is what I recall being a
so
pain point.
multiple people claiming the same
like major
recordings.
labels claiming the indie label share.
How could you, do you have any thoughts on how that could be mitigated in any way?
You should probably talk to that guy. I mean, I think it's gotten better and easier, but what do you have any advice on that? On how to?
Well, it all starts with the metadata. So if the metadata is good, then it helps a lot with the rest of the collection. But there's still so many, like, it would be amazing to have only, let's say, you get out a song, and then you have one place where you register all the metadata, and then all of the PROs and Sound Exchange and all of the other companies have access to that. So then there wouldn't be so much discrepancies and stuff. I guess I wouldn't have a business, but so, but I can find all of that. But yeah, having like all of your metadata up to date and clear, that is definitely something that will help you with your royalties for sure.
Yeah, the consistent metadata is extremely important, absolutely. And a lot of times, certain times it can be optional, like in Bandcamp. You don't need to put in a UPC or an ISRC code. Makes it quite difficult to put out those monies.
I think as a rule of thumb, even when you're filling in information and you don't have that asterisk next to the field, fill in the field anyway. It might say it's not mandatory, but the more information you fill in, the bigger the chance there is to collect your royalties. Even if it's a session musician, someone playing the triangle, there's royalties there for that triangle player in specific territories around the world. So the more information you can share with these collective societies, the more money you're going to get.
You know what's also interesting too? It's like, 20 years ago when I did panels, we still talked about metadata. Everybody still talks about metadata, and as much as you still talk about it, there's still a lot of sloppy stuff out there. And that's why people go with distributors, and that's why people have direct deals with retailers. Have a really good relationship with the retailers if you do have direct deals, right? To kind of make sure that you understand their systems, that you understand, how the fields actually apply to when it's actually being posted, to where it goes to these other systems, the MLC and so forth, so you can actually get the collections of that money. Mm-hmm. So, that's a really great point. It really starts with that. If you have a messy metadata side of things, you're never going to really get anywhere.
And it's going to make your life hard, across the board, too.
Yeah.
Especially when you have, multiple ISRC codes on the same songs.
Yep. And I know with, a system like ours, like a royalty system, it's we have a matching process that goes between your metadata and what comes either from the services or comes directly from, your distributor. And in most cases, if the metadata you're sending to your distributor or your service is the same as what's coming back, you should have 100% match. But there's always differences, right? How YouTube reports something, how Spotify reports something. You might have something that's a little different. To have a system that will allow you to actually make those matches and remember them going forward, because how many times are you going to be able to go back to the service to fix a spelling mistake or fix something that you messed the track listing up or something like that? It's very hard. So it's like having a system, having something that can allow you to scale and not really kind of worry about the 6-month reporting that's going to come up every single period is really important.
Yeah, I think when it comes to your royalty collection overall, being able to track those royalties is a massive part of that. So yes, using royalty solutions to use that to help you go through that process of you get data from so many different sources in so many different formats. You go cross-eyed looking at all these different statements. Sure. So to be able to put all of that into a system that can normalize all that data and make it easy to read, it's worth its weight in gold, literally.
Whether it's analytics or whether it's getting the reporting completed or at least knowing all right, I expect information monthly from these 10 services, every quarter from these 4 services, and to have someone to actually chase that too. right? Most cases in bigger, represented kind of retailers and distributors, they'll send monthly reports like clockwork because people expect the money, right? But then there's other ones that kind of, take a little longer, and maybe you're worrying about like your payment coming in. You're not going to pay your artist until you get that payment coming in. So there's a lot of kind of ebb and flow around all of this. But again, having a system that allows you to track that, or hey, just an Excel sheet that just tells me, you know what, I should be getting this income in this month, this quarter. If this doesn't happen, I need to ping this person to get that money.
And your catalog is only going to grow as a label, so it's only going to become harder.
I think as well, back to the importance of metadata is going right back to the moment the song is written in that songwriter's room. Mark down your shares, mark down your splits with your writers, make your agreement right there and then of how you want to split out any royalties that are going to be made from that song. Because the next thing you know, you have a very successful artist who cuts your song, and next thing the royalties come rolling in, the last thing you want to be doing is fighting over who gets what. So, you've got typically Nashville rules, split it all evenly, but then you get into, your hip hop R&B. People can be squabbling over 0.2% of a songwriter's share.
Oh, yeah.
But if that's decided on in the writer's room, you write it down somewhere. It can be done through email just to have a record, but always from day one, it makes your life so much easier for your future selves to collect and register. I know we were talking a lot about metadata, but Cheryl, what would you say the biggest pain point is to collecting royalties?
To collecting royalties, maybe even having the staff to keep up with it. Again, I work with a lot of medium to large size record labels that, have a large team, but they're working on marketing, they're working on their branding, they're working on their video services, they're working on their next, release coming out, and kind of making sure they have a whole, press release surrounding it, and kind of dealing with the services directly, or they're working with the distributor, finding the time to like really work on the back office stuff. Mm-hmm. I think it matters though to put time to it, or whether it's with a service to do it for you, because you want to keep those partners, you want to keep those artists, let them know that they're going to continue to get paid so they can pay their mortgages and so forth, right? Mm-hmm. Back on the metadata piece, though, you also have services, and nothing against Google, but YouTube, you get so much data from YouTube, right? And you get these files that we process, right? And there's maybe sometimes like just an ISRC or just a track name or like just hardly any information, but they have like an asset ID. And if you take that asset ID and you tie it to what is in the YouTube systems, yeah, you can find out what the album information is. But if they're not reporting all the information on the line, like how are you supposed to allocate it to the right person? So then you get stuck because the data is so huge and they're trying to process so much information that you're just stuck with what you got. You got the check, great, but you still have all these kind of like teeny tiny pennies, less than pennies of data that you have to process to people and make sure that you allocate it. And we're challenged with that all the time as a technology company to figure out and make sure we can give people tools to match to the right thing.
On the same note, though, as well as like sometimes you get these lump sums, whether it's breakage or whatever it might be, and then you got to figure out, okay, how do I pay my artists in a fair way that's prorated, maybe per the amount of streams, however you want to do it, but figuring that out could be a pain point as well.
Yeah, and if you don't have a system,
yes,
right, that does it, right,
exactly,
that allows you to take a dollar amount and apply it across a certain amount of albums and transactions, you're going to do it manually, you're going to do pivot tables and lookups and try to figure out how to allocate that. I've seen people do it. Right? And that's what kind of helps, I think, for what we do. We offer services and companies and software that allow people to just, hey, import a file in, put in a number, it allocates it automatically, right? Worth the effort, worth the investment, I think.
Yeah, having services available that are run by people like Gwilym, who are, they love doing this. So as, an artist and a creator, you probably don't love spending hours perusing over those gorgeous CSV and Excel files. But some strange people like us love it.
Exactly. And you have to love it to do that, but that's why we're here. And before I was a musician, I used to play in a band for like 15 years, but I was always the one doing the paychecks for the guys and like doing the admin stuff. And while the lead singer was the creative motor of the band, I was the one doing all the accounting and all of that. And that's how I got into royalty management and royalty, what I'm doing with Shinex. I think there was one thing you wanted to ask about. What is the best thing you can say to an artist or a label.
I was getting there. Hang on.
Because I was thinking with SiriusXM. Are you familiar with SiriusXM? Okay. Do you know how much it pays? No? Yes? So basically, one advice I can give to artists or labels is to get your songs on Sirius, because it pays about 11,000 times more than Spotify. So if you're playing on Spotify, you make about 0.004 cent, 0.003. On Sirius, if you own the masters and you're the artist, it's about $42 for every spin. So it goes up pretty fast. And a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know also how to get their songs on Sirius, but it's possible. And we started doing that recently with Josh right there. Hey, Josh. So yeah, that would be an advice for them. And yeah.
Yeah, I think, that brings up a good point, because you're talking about, you're working with people getting playlisting and things. I think a big important thing, and to your point as well, Cheryl, is having the team who can do this for you. You want your royalty geeks like us who enjoy doing it, because we also get the reward of, I think we all share the same passion, and kind of what got us into this. It gives us so much joy to know that we are helping facilitate payments to the art. Like, without the royalties coming back, it's a whole circle of life, right? You need to get paid so you can continue creating. So to have people like us who've worked in royalties and love royalties, get these people on your side, hire them to do your administrative work, because even if you're paying someone to do this, again, it's worth its weight in gold coming back, because it means you don't have to do it. Time is money, and then you can continue creating, you can continue putting your albums together, your release plans together for your label, you can continue, getting your writing sessions together for the writers and your publishing company, focus on the creation side, and let the experts take it away.
That's a really great point. I mean, as much as I've done royalties, I've consulted for labels, and I work at a software company now, and I train people on how to use a royalty platform, right? But as Mhairi said, it's like there's services out there and groups of people that will do it for you, right? That actually don't overcharge for it. I mean, they understand exactly, you should focus on the creative piece. There's other labels that, they want to control it, right? Or they have a team, a large team, that has, you have a mechanical person, you have an artist royalty person, then you have a manager that oversees all of that and then deals with inquiries from other artists because they want to keep in contact with all those people. That's another type of label, right? And then you have artists that might have, just use, a system for a distributor, right? And that's just easy enough because they provide all-in services. So there's lots of options out there depending upon what you feel like as, labels, right? Or a publisher or an artist, or a songwriter. It's like, hey, if I need to pay royalties, and everyone has to at some level, if you sell downloads or physical, you got to pay mechanicals, right? The stat rate just changed. Like, if you don't have a system that automatically does it for you, you have to figure out, oh man, I have these control comp licenses and there's a cap of 10, and if I do the calculation, it's a lot of work when those things happen, and it could change every year, technically, right, from here on. It hasn't changed since 2005, but, it's changed, right? It happened. I used to tell this joke to people. It's like, oh, yeah, if the stat rate ever changes, we'll help you with that. Don't worry about it. When pigs fly, whatever. And that was, back in, the 2000s. And now it's changed, and now we're helping everybody do it, right? So yeah, it's just things like that change. The industry is changing, and to have companies like ours help with that guidance there so you don't have to worry about it, I think is valuable.
I always thought I'm a really bad songwriter. As much as I always wanted to be an artist, I'm not. And if we all just do what we're really good at, it'll be great, because, that's what I try to tell, especially artist-run labels that are starting up, and they put a lot of mental power sometimes into learning this whole new thing, and then they stop writing music a lot of the time. So
I think as well, you talk about the label startups. I think a lot of those they're, in my experience, speaking to a lot of small labels and publishers who they've been around for a while, but they never thought about royalty processing as part of the whole business model of starting their record label. So they come to the likes of myself and Emmy and Cheryl and Guillaume to, they're like, yeah, we've been operational for 4 years now. And I say, so how are you paying your artists now? Well, we haven't got to that yet.
It's on the list.
And then you don't have that trust either to sign, with the artist. I mean, it's so important to be.
This has been going on for a while, right? I mean, I've worked at companies that are like, oh, we paid a lot of advances to the label, and we got all their content, and now we're selling it all. Oh, but what about the mechanical licensing? What about they got an advance, so it doesn't even matter, and all the publishers don't even know what's happening yet. So, but did you get metadata? Where's the Schedule A's for all this? Oh, no, we didn't get this. This is years ago, right? And then it's like, okay, so your job is to basically find all this information, right? And it's come a long way where now they're forcing people back to the metadata point, right? Give me the metadata, right? Because we're not going to post your content. But again, it's also tied to, a release is coming out and you're trying to do all the licensing and you're trying to get it all ready to go. And you know what, it releases, but hey, now you got to deal with the back office stuff to make sure you don't get sued or audited or whatever. So it still happens today for sure, but it's a lot more kind of, policed, right?
I think as well, talking about, pain points with royalty collection, I think as well, gaps in knowledge is a big part, if I was to ask myself the same question. People don't know what revenue streams are out there. They don't know all the revenue sources. Often when speaking to a record label, and we mentioned you're talking a lot about mechanicals. Now, people hear mechanical royalties, they think, oh, that's publishing revenue. Yes, it's publishing revenue, but it's an obligation for the label to pay that publishing revenue to the publishers. So for every copy of that release, the label owes the publisher mechanical royalty. For every permanent download, same thing. For every stream, same thing with the DSPs will have a blanket license in place to facilitate that. But just sometimes, people are very tunnel vision when it comes to specific terminology.
Yeah, and it's important to make the difference between the type of rights, like the copyright with the publishing and the writers and all of that, that is different than the neighboring rights, which doesn't really exist in the States, because I think it was at Rome that they signed the convention, but they call it more like digital rights, satellite rights. In here, but the neighboring rights will pay the artist, so the one that performs, and the rights owner, so the people that own the masters or paid for the recording. And the difference I go back to Sirius because this is my expertise, but the difference is astounding, like astonishing. A writer on a song that plays on Sirius will make about $1 a spin at ASCAP or BMI. But the performers and the rights owner will make about 42. So if you're the artist, you'll make approximately $19 per song, per spin. And if you're the master's owner, 23. And what happens is if you play a cover on Sirius, the person that wrote it will get the $1 and you'll get the 42 if you sing the recording and paid for it. So it's insane. And I get that. I'm from Quebec City, and we have a lot of people that play covers on Sirius on the Canadian channels, and the writers would make about $1, and they would be making tens of thousands a year, like insanity. So it's important to know the difference. And sometimes songwriters will come to my platform and say, "Hey, where is do I owe any of this, or am I owed any of this?" And the answer is no. But if you negotiate parts of the performer's side, and songwriters started doing that, then you can get a share of that. So it's important if you're a songwriter to talk with the artist and try to get some percentage on the performer side, because that's like $20 a spin. So even if you get 10% or whatever, 15%, it's like $3 a spin. And you can get many, many spins on Sirius per month, and that will accumulate way faster than ASCAP or BMI will pay you. Does that make sense?
Here's a question for sort of raise hands out here. How many people they're familiar with neighboring rights? How many people are registered to collect their neighboring rights? Okay, not bad.
Yeah, we have more people than earlier. Maybe they just did that on their phone.
Here's another interesting one. Private copying. Who has heard and who's familiar with private copying levies? bit of a smaller amount. Are you registered to collect your private copying? Would you know where? Yeah. So typically that would be through your, Mechanical Royalty Collective, HFA here in the US, CMRRA in Canada, MLC, do they do private copying? It's all digital streaming, right? The MLC? Yeah. So again, all of these, it's something that's not talked about very often, but yeah, all those blank media levies and things, people buy blank media. Again, you're making a copy of a song, of a work. That songwriter should be getting paid for that. So it's hard to capture, but there's something there.
What's it like, sheet music?
Blank media. So, people used to rip CDs and make copies of things, having things on your, downloaded onto your phones, all of that. So you're choosing what device to copy the music onto. It's not being distributed by a label. So there's just all these little sources of revenue that, kind of get forgotten about.
Yeah. Maybe another advice for artists and labels regarding Sirius again, of course. Are you familiar with direct licensing? Direct licensing to Sirius? That would be a way to collect royalties, neighboring rights, and bypassing sound exchange. That a lot of people do that. What I was able to find out with all the analysis that I've done across all the catalogs and all the things that we audited is the direct license will pay more than sound exchange for some channels. But if you're playing on smaller channels that aren't listened as much, it's actually way less than sound exchange. And I've seen that for a lot of channels. Let's say if you're playing on the highway or these major channels that have a lot of listenership, you'll make $200 a spin instead of 40. And I've seen $70 a spin for a jazz channel and stuff like that. But I was able to see also for smaller channel, instead of making $40 a spin, they were making like $6, $7 a spin, and there's no way to get that money back. So if you have a direct license, it might be good for some of your artists, but for others, it might be something that we have to look into, and that's something we do. So we can definitely help you with that.
So just to sort of, keeping an eye on the time here as well, because I do want to allow some time for questions, but just, you've given 2 awesome pieces of advice. Emmy, if you could give one piece of advice to a startup label, what would that be?
I would say, try to make your deals simple, right? Because oftentimes lawyers will negotiate these contracts that get very, very complex, where maybe there's a fixed price for a Bandcamp sale and it's a 50% split if it's distributed, without realizing, like, you have to, every 6 months, look at that contract and execute on that. And there's no reason really to make your life so hard. I mean, every time I've ever negotiated a record deal, I've learned something. And it's usually when, like, I'm doing accounting or when I'm trying to get a sync and I put too many days for the artist to approve. But one of the others. But I'd say, take a look at the contracts and make sure it's not overly complex.
So royalties are hard. They don't need to be harder.
Yeah, they don't need to be harder. I mean, like, Eddie is a very flexible software. I think every software is able to handle that. But in general, it's still complex and it's still something that,
Well, it also makes it easy for the person receiving the statement. It's like if it's a 50-50 split, it's like, oh, okay, I see 50%, I understand. Oh, it's very straightforward on the income that's coming in, right? I mean, it makes sense. But sometimes you can't get away from lawyers that just want to totally overcomplicate it. And what I found being a royalty manager back in the day, it's like, yeah, you get these contracts and you're like, wow, how am I supposed to do this in the system that's in this box, right?
Like PPD on streaming.
Oh my God, I know. Oh, no. Horrible.
I don't.
So,
My advice to new labels starting up, I would just say there's a lot of services out there. There's a lot of just ways to collect and people that can help you collect. And there's nothing against any of those services. But in my opinion, I would say if you're starting new, work with a distributor. There's many of them, right, out there. A lot of the majors have them. They offer many different services, right? You can just get the basic service of, hey, I want you to take my content and I want you to just get it up on the services. I don't want to do direct deals. Maybe they won't even do them with you because you're so small, you're not even prominent yet, right? So these distributors out there can help you with that. They have video services, marketing services, publishing services, neighboring rights services, collection services, like the Orchard, they have items in their platform that they can help you calculate royalties if you want to do it themselves. They can offer you other services that might not happen at that distributor, but elsewhere that can help you with those things. So to get started, it's a kind of an umbrella of just options here, and you can learn from that. You don't have to stay with the distributor forever, but they can teach you, how to get what you need, tell you about services like his, things like that, or you find that out, and then eventually you can kind of be off on your own. But when you're first getting started, yes, it could be a percentage that they take of your income, but you got to get out there somehow. Right? And maybe you're in a certain territory that really makes sense. You work with a global distributor that can get you in certain areas in India and where it's actually growing right now, in Japan, where maybe your content really sells and they can give you analytics around all of that. Oh, wow, I just did this release and wow, it really took off in Detroit, or it took off wherever, and you can actually look at these heat maps around different tours that you do and you can see all this stuff. So again, you pay a percentage for that, but it's a cost of doing business, I would say.
Yeah, it kind of comes...
Your time, too. Your time is money. I mean...
Oh, 100%.
Exactly.
It goes back to what
kind
you
of
said
comes
originally.
full circle.
Being creative, right? Being creative and being able to focus on the music and having that distributor do that work for you to get it out there.
So it comes full circle to building your team.
Yep.
So, even companies like Songtrust on the publishing side, not everyone immediately knows how to register songs with all the PROs. The
yeah.
companies like that will do it for you, take away the heavy lifting.
And the relationships they have with the services, if they think your track's hot, it's man, they can talk to their guy at Spotify, they can talk to their guy at Apple Music, have you on the recent playlists, right? Get that pop, right? Again, they have all the services there, what I think can help at least get you started. So that would be my one best advice.
Awesome. Excellent advice.
Yeah.
I'm aware of the time, so I am going to ask if anyone has any questions for us. Is that mic on? Yeah? Do you want to use the mic, or are you just going to yell? You can yell. Yeah.
What's the best way to audit a major label or a major publishing company?
Shinex. That's it.
That's the real money. You guys are talking about, entities that have sort of federal mandates
Yep.
and have, feet on their neck to keep them honest. The real paydays are in auditing the private companies, Universal Music, Records. What's the best way to do that?
I think, again, when you're building a team of services, again, it's about having the right team. You're going to want the right legal team, the right finance team who are equipped to dive into that data and tear it apart and find...
Work with a law firm or just people with relationships that
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, or you outsource, if you're a label, you outsource it to an entity, right? A firm that actually does auditing, and they have people. And yeah, if you're looking for some suggestions, I'd be happy to do that. But yeah, it's and that's where, for what I do, if these things do come up, right? I mean, our customers get audited by Harry Fox. So I've been through about 10 of them, and I kind of know the questions they ask, and I can point to things in the system. So that's with something there. But if you're looking to audit someone else, it's there's a cost obviously associated with that. But like you said, the payday could be super great because maybe they're missing things, right? So yes, I would probably say, yeah, the best way to do it would be to go to a service or an entity that actually does this. This is what they do, and get referrals, right? Hey, what have they got for people lately? Right? Is it worth the money, right? Talk to them. It doesn't hurt, right, to have a conversation.
And just to understand your question, is it, you have a record company, is that correct? And then the major pay you, and you want to audit that? Is that it?
I have songs that have been covered by publishing companies. I had masters that have been sampled.
Okay. Well, on the neighboring rights side, regarding Sirius, we can definitely help you. We're right there. So for that, yeah. Publishing, we don't do.
Neighboring rights was more of like a performing rights kind of royalty.
It's the person who sings the song and the person who owns the master. Yeah, paid by Sound Exchange.
Yeah, I need money from the private entities.
Right.
Yes.
So one thing that hasn't been mentioned so far is royalties for lyric exhibition, which drive all other royalties as well, because when a fan knows the song, there's tons of ancillary revenue, mechanicals, performances, neighboring rights, radio play, curated, everything else. So I work with Lyric Find, and Lyric Find licenses the rights to exhibit lyrics, across all platforms, and as well with Deezer lyric translation, so people can understand songs across the world
Interesting, yeah.
in different languages. And that doubles the publisher's share on average per stream. So it's a very important, that's the direct income, not the ancillary income that I just mentioned, syncs, everything else. And we do have agreements now with distributors who are sending us lyrics, about 8 million lyrics, and probably Orchard's one of the companies we work with.
Yeah.
And, over 100 platforms across the world, everything offers deals now. So if you're in the car listening to music, Lyric finds services the screens so you can read
The song name and all that, yeah, and you can see.
So just something for everybody to know is that the lyric exhibition rights, even though that's a publishing right, increases master income about 10%. Very significant increase in the master.
Oh, interesting, I didn't know that, yeah.
So anyway, just something to
Of course, yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
lyrics and notes really are the original metadata of any song.
Well, look at where the future's going with cars, and like I think I heard that like there's going to be like Sirius and these services in cars like going forward. Period. Right? I mean, no.
Right now Mercedes has it.
Right.
Audi, Nissan,
Yeah.
and Infiniti are coming out this year.
Does that mean a car is technically blank media now?
Yeah. Interesting, right?
The front seat usually isn't on when
Yeah, that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well,
the front seat is available when it's parked. When you're waiting.
yeah.
Got it.
Or with
There you go.
autopilot, I guess, because you can watch Netflix now, so you can read a song.
Are you saying it's going to be in cars without paying a subscription to
Oh
Sirius?
no. There's definitely It's in cars now, but you have to subscribe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But it's going to be in every car. You're going to have the ability to actually subscribe to Sirius in every car, or depending upon the brand of car or whatever.
Even if it's not serious, if it's the radio.
Exactly. Yes.
You're showing, getting paid for the publishing side.
Yep.
And it extends the listening time and the number of repeats, usually for songs.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
Interesting.
Right.
Very interesting.
Any other questions out there? Yes.
Yeah, I work for a record label, and we develop like a lot of artists. So we're talking like artists that we signed off a demo off Bandcamp. Is there any advice that I can give them for them to collect their performing rights? Is there like a cheat sheet? Is there something that you like, hey, you should do this, this, and this before we get started on rolling out this album?
I have a small record label, Rhyme and Reason Records, and it's a pretty small shop. So usually, what I try to do is give them an easy way to outsource that, like a sound exchange, right? And not a sound exchange. I'm sorry, a song trust. Especially if they're going to be touring in Europe. There's money when you put the set list in and you play in front of a festival. That's mine.
Yeah, there's a couple places where they need to register just to make sure they're collecting all types of royalties. And also, normally, let's say, is the record out yet, or for your?
When we're preparing to put it out, like we're just kind of go through our checklist and make sure that
Okay.
covered. Like obviously on the record label side of things, I handle a lot of that, but like sometimes I don't know what to tell the artist. They don't have a manager yet. They don't have anyone guiding them. So
Yeah.
I'm their one. Hey, what should I do here? Sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because it was a resource for them to be like, you should be collecting all of this stuff, and here's how.
Yeah.
I think it's helpful to think of 4 streams of revenue overall. You've got your artist, your performer, so they need to make sure they're registered with their artist collection society as well. Not just Sound Exchange, but outside of the US, terrestrial radio gives performance royalties. So in the UK, in Canada, and Europe, if they register as the artist, they will get a performance royalty back for that. So you've got your artist, you've got your master rights owner, so your label, the label has to register that recording first. You've got your songwriter, if they're writing their own songs, they're also the composer. The lyricist, register with LyricFind. And then you've got your publisher. If the songwriter owns their own publishing, they are also the publisher. If they're signed to another publishing company, again, that publisher has to make sure that's all registered. So there's typically, for every single sound recording you hear, there's at least 4 streams of revenue coming in for that one play.
And I think a lot of artists that write their own songs and are not signed up with a publisher don't realize that they can collect another half of that publishing revenue.
Any other questions? I think we've got time for one more. Yes.
How do you audit the actual societies that collect from your the MLC, how do you audit Spotify to know that the MLC is collecting properly from whatever
Maybe I.
So
I think we got it all
on you go.
band
Yeah.
together.
Well, I was.
I mean,
we were
that's
talking.
what I think Merlin and A2IM.
We were talking earlier about companies like Luminate and Mediabase. They're all companies that track they track performance and sales.
So basically what it would be is we have at Chinex, we have that separate data set of everything that played since 2015 on Sirius, and we use that to compare to what SoundExchange is paying people or artists or labels. And that would be comparison of what was received, what was actually generated, and then we compare both, and that's when we can go back to them.
radio doesn't make sense because Mediabase and they do track every play, but Spotify.
But,
A lot of alternative
yeah.
works, a lot of alternative versions of records.
That's where there's a company, I'm based in Canada, so I know the Canadian ones, but Luminate is a company that does track all that, tracks your Spotify, Apple, all of that streaming data.
But yeah, it's about using somebody like that to give you a sense of, oh man, are they way off? Are they close? They're never going to be exact, right? But it gives you that clue of like what this gentleman said in the front. It's like, how do I know to go after them? How do I know that they're actually shorting me XYZ or whatever? It's a start.
Yeah, Nielsen BDS, then MRC data, then Luminate, then next year, I don't know, something else maybe.
So I'm very aware that we're a bit over time now, so we will have to wrap this up. But, we're around. If you want to come and chat with us, we're available. We can continue this conversation here. But thank you all so much for choosing to learn about royalties.